Hello my friends, and welcome to my channel. My name is Ryan Hebert, and this is where I share my insights. And today I'm thinking about desire, which is an interesting phenomenon. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I've been discussing the depths in the universe. This idea of verticality, which is very difficult to point to because you can't see it. And depth is the only way to describe it, which implies a direction downward. But sometimes transcendence can be seen as upwards. But true spiritual revelation is the cessation of difference altogether, although we are using terminology that accentuates differences, which makes this very tricky, yet fun. So we're going to plunge into desire itself. And desire, like all expressions of the universe, seem to have a verticality. Everybody knows what it's like to have an outburst, an angry outburst, a fit of rage, a seeming act that comes from the top of the head. So a spiritual advisor might say, oh, that's your ego. And this is true. But the ego is very, very difficult to point to as a separate culprit from something called the spirit. That seems like a separation, doesn't it? It seems like the spirit has an impulse and the mind has a compulse. But from an anthropological standpoint, pulse is pulse. Act is act. Something comes from and produces a result. And from an outward view, it doesn't look like there's a difference between what the ego does and what the spirit does. So, at a very fundamental level, you could say these are human acts. These are things that humans do. Adolf Hitler did this. Mother Teresa did this. Mussolini did this. Nelson Mandela did this. Caligula did this. Jesus Christ did this. And these are seemingly different human beings doing different things. So if you were this scientific alien, let's say you were a scientific alien, you were studying humans as simply just organisms on a planet, you would say, oh yeah, humans beat each other up. They torture and inflict pain upon one another. They destroy one another. They build armies against themselves. They devour their young. They torture and abuse their young. They enslave. Humans do all these things. And they also are altruistic. Humans also save each other. They heal each other. They do these things. And you would simply just see that humanity is doing humanity's thing. So, from that perspective, it's very impersonal. The personal interpretation is in a realm that would be unseen to a truly neutral observer. Much like watching insects, for example. Maybe there are some insects that devour their young. The females destroy the males. They colonize against each other. We don't know what they're doing internally. But outwardly, we would say that particular colony of insects does this, and this. And we think nothing of it. Maybe the males have sex with the males. And the females have sex with the females. We wouldn't see that as a moral issue, would we? We also if certain insects were able to change their gender, we would say, oh, that's just a phenomenon of that particular species. We wouldn't be in conflict about males becoming females and females becoming males. That would just be an observational thing. And so it is with us. You can see that some humans destroy, kill, lie, steal, create armies against one another. And you can see some humans express deep compassion, healing, restoration, and recovery. So the question is, are these acts coming from a different source? And the answer is no. An act is an act. And then we have these interpretive minds that can impose an interpretation on top of the neutrality of it all. So this dimension is we can't point to how we know the difference between right and wrong, and the so-called difference between the compulsive mind and the urgings of the so-called compulsive spirit. It just seems to be down a level, right? Where do we point to it? Where is this? Where is this sense of morality and right and wrong and spirit and ego? It's the same. That's where cessation is. That's where the cessation of difference. You recover from this notion that you are separate from it all and you're doing something different, when essentially we are beings that cannot help it. That's a hard pill to swallow. Because everything just seems to be arising, even desire. You can say, you can put yourself in a double bind, which makes this just weird. Like, think about your desire. Some desire arises in you. And then you can desire to stop desiring, which is weird. Well, how do you desire to stop desiring? Do you desire to desire to stop desiring? How far back does it go? It's like that man who goes to the Zen master. I may be getting this story wrong, but he says, he goes to the Zen master and says, I'd like to stop suffering. And the Zen master says, great, then stop desiring. And the man goes away and comes back to the Zen master and says, well, how do I desire to stop desiring? And so when you tell somebody, if I get on YouTube as I guess a spiritual teacher, if you want to call it that, and I say, let it go. I'm trying to instill a desire in you to release. Letting go is wanting a desire. It's a desire to want to let go, if you think about it. So all action is a basic instinct. All desire, everything that arises is a basic instinct. And you recover from the so-called difference between a voluntary act and an involuntary act, and the so-called difference between a compulsion and a compassion. And all of it comes from the same place, which seems to have been able to develop something called depth. Because ultimately, the cause of the universe and the effect of the universe is the universe. Your outbursts of anger and your deepest, most compassionate act are impulsive. They arise from the same location. Yet, you can perceive a depth within you. Can't point to it. So ultimately, there is one responsible party for cause and effect. That means there is no my desire, my mind, my will. None of it. I've done it all. I've killed and maimed, destroyed and abused, lied and stolen, deceived, harmed and killed. I've done all that. I've also healed, restored, renewed, helped. But ultimately, you can't help it. I can't help it. I'm here on YouTube talking. How can I help this? Even if I decided not to get on YouTube, I still can't help it. Jesus couldn't help it either. Buddha couldn't help it either. And dare I say, horrible people in history couldn't help it either. It's because the universe can't help itself. There's nothing to be helped. It arises in some strange way in this realm I can't point to. I can see the differences that ultimately help me see the unity. Where insane becomes sane. Where pain becomes pleasure. Where the impulse of the ego and the urgings of the spirit all come from the same place. I don't know. We have this strange ability to kind of catch on. But it begins by going into the verticality of desire. Yeah, it might initially seem that your impulses and your deep, compassionate acts, one comes from the mind, one comes from the spirit, but mind and spirit are one. The source is the same. And so, we consider the source once again. And you too can recover from being an addict of separation. My name is Ryan Hebert, and I appreciate your time. If you're interested in more of my insights, please check out my daily blog. It's called MyMorningMotivator.com. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.